I welcome you all to the second session of Day 1 AICT sponsored online short-term training program on cybersecurity and resilience to smart grid. And I request our advisor, Dr. G. Samandan, to introduce the session speakers. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Gayatri. Good afternoon, everybody. I think we have the second speaker from the same company, Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories. I briefed about Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories in the morning, the first session. They are the manufacturers and the designers and the suppliers of product related productive protection services, ranging from generator protection, transmission protection, distribution automation and control. They started in 1982 in Pullman in Washington State, and they have 5,000 employees all over, 2,300 in Pullman and other places, and another 2,700 in 45 countries. The big company is rated number one in the the Newton Evans worldwide study they have done. They are the number one protection company. They have now leading suppliers of protection equipments even for India, for various power grid stations and electricity board substations. And we have speakers from that company. Mr. Shripad Kapse will be the speaker now. He has taken a triple degree with honors from Visvesvaraya Technological University in 2011 and a PG diploma in transmission distribution system from that NPTI, the National Power Training Institute of our power system in 2012. He was with Eastern Railroad as application engineer and then joined the Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories. He is now the lead application engineer, and he will now take over the session. Over to Shripad.
Thank you, sir, for the introduction. And I welcome all the participants to this session, and I thank KCG College of Engineering for arranging this technical sessions and to provide us an opportunity to present one of our solution. So good afternoon to all. So let me begin with my presentation. So in this presentation, we are going to talk about some of the hazards that are related to the arc flash, which are quite evident in all the generation systems, may it be industrial power plant or an industrial power system or a generating power stations or even renewable generations where we are basically connecting to the grid and even in the battery storage, grid-tied battery storage power plants. So most of us may be aware about the electrical hazards that are related to electrical shocks, or it may be the huge amount of temperature that is generated whenever there is an arc flash kind of an incident. So these are also quite evident in all the industries which I mentioned before. So we will be talking in this presentation on some of the ways to understand what an arc flash hazard is and to understand what are the different ways or approaches that are typically followed in the industry to reduce their arc flash hazard. We will also see in a way that how this particular system, what I'm going to present today, can also overcome some of the cybersecurity risks that are associated with the current installations in the industry to mitigate this arc flash hazard. So basically, when we look at an arc flash, it is basically a dangerous condition that is associated with the release of electrical energy whenever there is a face-to-face fault or a face-to-ground fault in any power system. So typically, you can expect the temperature of an arc flash to reach up to 3000 degrees Celsius whenever there is an arc flash occurring. So if you look at the ways of how we can reduce this energy or the arc flash energy in order to minimize the harm that it causes to the personnel who is standing right next to the switch gears, and in order to minimize the damage that or to the equipments that these arc flash hazard can cause. So basically this energy is proportional to the voltage multiplied by the current and multiplied by the time. So here the voltage is basically the operating voltage of the system. It could be 415 volt system, it could be a 3.3, 6.6, 11 kV or a 33 kV system. So in these cases, the voltage is reducing the voltage is not a very feasible option. So the feasible option, and if you look at the current, so there are a couple of ways to reduce this current. It may be by increasing the impedance on the incoming transformer. It may be by reducing the ground fault current by implementing a high resistance grounded system. So in any of these cases, so the hazards related to arc flash is limited to some extent, but from the economic point of view, it is really difficult for us industry or a power generation company to implement this kind of system. So the other way of reducing this arc flash energy would be by reducing the time, and this turns out to be the most economical way to limit the arc flash energy. So in 2013 in the United States, they did a statistical study on the amount of on the number of events that occurred where arc flash and arc flash related injuries were concerned. So up till 2013, it was observed that there were more than 30,000 events or arc flash event that occurred overall in the United States, out of which 7,000 were mostly related to the burn injuries, and out of that 7,000 there were 2,000 personnel who were hospitalized and 400 fatal accidents were seen. And if you look at the percentage of this out of this 400, so more than 80% of them were due to the burn effect that these fatal incidents occurred. Here are some of the images on how this arc flash can be hazardous not only to the personnel but also to the equipments. So let us see some of the demonstration of an arc flash hazard that could occur. So here you can see that if a fault persists for a 46 cycle, that is a fault clearing time is about 46 cycle, then the kind of arc flash intensity and arc flash boundary that you are going to see is going to be huge. So you can imagine if a person is standing right next to the switchboard and what kind of hazardous effect that these kind of arc flash can cause to a person, and not only to the person, it even involves the equipments, the primary equipments that are involved in these kind of damages. And similarly, if you reduce the time associated with the arc flash incident energy, then by reducing that particular time, even the arc flash intensity and the arc flash boundary is also reduced. So here is an arc flash hazard approach boundary, you can say. So here you have zero distance. So this is basically the part where the fault is going to occur. It could be a face-to-face or face-to-ground fault, which is basically inside the chamber of the switchgear. And then you have a limited restricted approach boundary, wherein there is a risk of a person getting electrical shock apart from the burn injuries. And then there is a limited approach boundary wherein qualified person wearing a proper personal protective equipment is only supposed to enter. And then you have the arc flash boundary where a person can get a second degree burn. So if you wish to visualize, then this is the working distance and this is the arc flash boundary. So here we see that in any studies or the short circuit study that a lot of people do and even we can do. So in that case, you can see generally these kind of studies, they also provide arc flash related hazard categories also. So this is just to visualize as to what could be the boundary of an arc flash if the arc flash were to happen in this particular switchboard. And this is just for the 415 volt switchboard level. So you have, apart from that, 3.3, 6.6 and 33 kV systems as well. So these are some of the scenes from the incident on the damage to the equipment that these kind of faults can create. And this, to restore these kind of damages, it takes a really long time because it involves procuring all the equipment that are related, and till then the process is at halt, and this can create a significant amount of economic losses to the company, it may be industry or to the generation company. So whenever there is an arc flash that is going to occur in a system, so you are going to find thermal energy and the UV radiations associated with the arc flash energy. And then you have the sharp-nulls. These are nothing but when the fault basically occurs between the conductor. For example, let's assume a face-to-face fault, which basically involves two conductors. So even in a fraction of a millisecond, these solid conductors are going to be converted into a molten state. And when they go into the molten state, then due to the pressure and the sound waves that are associated with the fault, these molten liquid or the molten metal can become a sharp null, and it can pass through human body. And then apart from that, there is a heat and smoke which can choke the visual abilities and the hearing abilities of a individual. And apart from that, it can also create a significant amount of depression or the apprehension on working on these kind of a switchboards whenever there is an arc flash hazard. So there are basically three standards that governs these kind of arc flash hazards and the PPE requirements of arc flash. So the NFPA 70E basically provides an basic idea of what should be the PPE that needs to be used depending upon the amount of incident energy that is going to occur during an arc flash fault. And then there is a IEEE standard 1584, which basically tells you on how to calculate the incident energy and the boundary of an arc flash if the arc flash were to happen. And then there is a National Electricity and Safety Code in the US, which basically provides us a set of procedures or set of cares to be taken before a personnel enters this kind of a switchgear compartment for either any closing, breaker closing or breaker opening kind of a thing, or it may be a rack in, rack out kind of a operation. So from the NFPA 70E, there are basically the faults are categorized into four scenarios: the four category 1, category 2, and category 3 and category 4 faults. And there are associated PPE. So the category 1 can withstand up to 4 calorie per centimeter square. The category 2 can withstand up to 8 calories, and category 3 and 4 can withstand up to 25 and 40 calorie per centimeter square. Calorie per centimeter square. And then there is a arc flash calculation steps that are also provided by the IEEE 1584 standard. And for which you basically, if you wish to calculate these arc flash related energies, then it would require basically collecting the system information and the mode of operation of the relays or the switchgear, and then we need to calculate bolted fault and the arc fault current. So just to mention, there is a difference between the bolted fault current and the arc fault current. So basically a bolted fault is where you have two conductors that come in contact, in which case the fault resistance is basically zero. But as the temperature rises between these bolted conductors, the slowly the solid conductor starts going into a molten state, and there is a gap that is generated between the two conductors. and now there is an arc between these arc between these conductors that is going to happen, and for this particular arc the air is going to be the resistance medium. So basically the air offers some resistance, and due to which there is a reduction in the arc fault current as well. So basically even the IEEE 1584 provides the guidelines on how do we calculate the arc fault current as well. And then we need to determine the protective relay operating time and other equipment related informations like what is the type of chamber that this arc flash hazard may occur, what is the kV level of the switchgear, and based on all those things we are going to determine the incident energy and the proportional arc flash boundary that could occur. So if you look at a typical industrial system or a generation system, so you would find that you would find two incomers and a one bus coupler. So basically these incomers feed power to the outgoing feeders. So these outgoing feeders may be a tie feeder, or it could be a motor feeder, or it could be some load. So, but if you look, so basically, like we understand that in any power system, in order to maintain the selectivity and sensitivity, the relays that are used to protect these feeders are basically time coordinated. So if you look at the time coordination there, you would find that for the outgoing feeder relays, the operating time is much faster. Okay, and then for the bus coupler and for the main incomer relay, it would be slightly slower. So this is just to maintain the selectivity for the fault. For example, if the fault occurs on the outgoing leg of the outgoing side of the particular feeder, then I would expect the breaker associated with that feeder to trip rather than tripping the main incomer or the bus coupler, which is why we have a faster operating time for the feeder and a slower operating time maintained for the incomers. So in case due to some reason, if this particular incomer were to did not trip, then we would expect the bus coupler and the main incomer relay to operate and trip the breaker. So how do we avoid? What are the steps that are taken in the industry in order to mitigate these arc flash hazard? So I would be explaining that. So now, like I mentioned, there is something called as a fast bus trip scheme. In the fast bus trip scheme, basically, you are going to send a couple of signals from these relays or the feeder protection relays on the outgoing feeder to a logical processor, and then the logical processor takes care of certain logics and it issues either sends an after processing that particular logic, it may send a signal to the incomer to either trip or not to trip. And all this kind of communication occurs in the, I'm sorry, there is some background noise.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I muted, sir.
Yeah. So these kind of communication protocols involve the communication between the relays to occur, and there is a possibility of even cyber issues or the cyber security related concern when we are connecting all these relays on a communication protocol or on a Ethernet, when we bring all of them on a Ethernet switch and we are communicating things to the incomer breaker. So there is also a risk not only related to the delay in the operation of these kind of system, there is also a risk associated with cyber threats. So in a conventional way, if you look from the operation point of view, and if you take out the cyber related issues out of it, so I'm just explaining how this system is going to operate. So here we are having there are a couple of relays on the outgoing feeder, and there is a relay on the incomer. Basically, for any fault that occurs on the outgoing, if the fault were to occur on the outgoing leg, then this particular relay which is protecting the feeder 2 is supposed to trip. And due to some reason, let us assume that the fault occurs on the particular bus bar. So here, if the fault occurs on the particular bus bar, then that fault is not seen by the relay that is protecting the outgoing feeder. So now that is only seen by the incomer relay. But this incomer relay is time coordinated in order to operate with a delayed operation time, which basically creates a large fault current, or the large amount of arc flash energy could be created because of the delayed operating time of the relay. So as a system of operation in the fast bus trip scheme, what we do is whenever the relay on the feeder is going to operate, we send a blocking command from one of the signal to the incomer, from one of the output contact of the relay to the incomer relay, either by on a communication protocol, or it may be on a hard wiring basis. And then if the fault were supposed to happen on the switch, on the bus bar itself, then the relay on the incomer has a second level of overcurrent limit, which basically looks at a higher overcurrent limit. And since it has not received a blocking signal from the outgoing feeder, the incomer relay is going to trip instantaneously. But in this case, some of the disadvantage may be there are more number of relay setting that would be involved. The system would be a bit complex, and there is a threat of a cyber attacks as well once they are all, if they are all communicating on the Ethernet network. And then the trip time associated with this type of scheme also is about 48 millisecond, and in addition to it you would have a breaker operating time. So if you consider, if you add on both of this, so we may get a fault clearing time of about 100 to 120 millisecond kind of a delay. And this kind of delay can also provide a way for the large arc flash incident energy to occur. There is another method which uses the high impedance bus bar scheme. In the high impedance bus bar scheme, you would find that a dedicated relay is installed just in order to understand just to do the differential protection of for the particular bus bar. So here, all this basically, any differential scheme works on the Kirchhoff's current law, wherein if the sum of the incoming current is not equal to the sum of outgoing current, so the difference is basically provided as a differential current. And if the fault were to happen on the outgoing leg of the feeder, then the system is pretty much balanced, because the incoming current over here is going to be distributed among all this outgoing feeder, and the summation of the incoming and the outgoing is going to be zero. But if the fault were to happen on the switchboard where the person is working on, or the fault were to happen on the breaker where the person is working on, then the system would find that as a differential current, and then a differential scheme would operate and trip all the breakers associated with the fault. But in this case, there is an extra cost that is associated with the CT, and there's an additional relay requirement to do this high impedance differential scheme. And if you look from the operational point of view, the operation time is going to be less than or almost equal to about 30 millisecond. There is another method which is used, that is the maintenance mode. In the maintenance mode, basically what we do is you assign a high sensitive overcurrent element in the same relay. But this particular overcurrent element bypasses the time coordinated system. It, it basically takes off the time coordinated system, and only operator, whenever he is going to work on a particular switchboard or a switch gear, is going to enable this mode. And if there was a chance, or if there is fault occurs on the switchboard, or on while the person is working on the switchboard, the relay would instantaneously trip. but there are some disadvantages related to that. That is, basically we are losing the time coordination. So if we are losing the time coordination system, that also basically means that we are losing the selectivity to trip whenever the fault occurs. So there are chances that in this case, even for the outgoing fault, your entire switchboard, including the incomer, may trip, and that is not expected in a power plant or in an industry. And even there are chances that the operator may leave the relay in a maintenance mode even after the work is done. So even there is a chances of human errors that are associated along with uh, the other issues related to the loss of coordination. And also sometimes even these kind of switching is done on a network based protocol. So even there is a threat related to the cyber security coming into picture. And if you look at the overall operating time is somewhat close to 20 to 30 milliseconds even here. And one of the best and the most economical way, I can say, and a novel approach to mitigate this kind of fault is using the arc flash. So the reason being that this kind of arc flash protection doesn't involve the relay to be connected in any of the switch. There is no communication requirement between any relays. So it eliminates the threat of cyber attacks. And then also the time associated with the relay operation is much faster when we implement this kind of arc flash sensor based arc flash mitigation. And here we are still going to maintain the time coordination between the incomer and the outgoing, and we are not going to lose any coordination, or there is no threat of losing the entire switchboard if the fault were to occur on the outgoing system. In this case, what we basically look at is we are basically going to mount sensors on some of the key locations in the switchboard, and then we are going to take those sensors on a fiber optic cable to the incomer relay, and then the incomer relay is anyways connected to the CT since it is providing the protection associated with the incomer. So both combined together, we are providing a solution to the mitigating the arc flash energy. So in order to achieve this, we use the ultra fast overcurrent principle. So the ultra fast overcurrent principle in the relay, which is used for the arc flash protection, acts much faster than the conventional overcurrent system. That is because of the filters that we are going to use in this particular algorithm. So basically, we know that to convert any analog signals to digital, you would require A to D conversion, and then you do a filtering. So this filtering could be based on the full cosine filter, but the disadvantage with the full cosine filter is that it is going to take one cycle to catch a cycle. That is, in order to measure the quantities associated of one cycle, there is a delay of one cycle that is going to occur. So here we are going to eliminate those delays. Since we are not looking at the full cosine filters, we are going to use a much faster filters like a half cosine filter in order to measure the overcurrent. And we are going to measure the intensity of light sensed by the sensor as an analog quantity, and as using the combined approach of both the light and the current, we are going to mitigate the or provide a protection for an arc flash fault. So if you look at the overall operating time in this case, with this novel approach, we are getting an operating time of as fast as 2 milliseconds. So this is much faster in compared to all the other previous scheme that we saw earlier. So some of the disadvantage I would say, or maybe some of the additional effort that would be involved in this particular scheme would be to mount these sensors and some additional testing activities. But on the other hand, the customers are going to get an added advantage of low cost and by maintaining this protection operates by maintaining the existing coordinated system, and you are also eliminating any sort of cyber threats because we are not going to connect the system to any of the communication equipments. So even from the reliability point of view and the operating time point of view, the arc flash protection is going the relay based arc flash protection is going to offer you much better and a faster reliable solution. So in this case, what we generally do is we use the relay, the same relay which is used for protecting the incomers and the outgoing. The same relay is connected with a few of the sensors. So these sensors basically look at the intensity of the light. So when the intensity of light is going to exceed a certain threshold, along with that intensity of the light, we are also going to measure the current that is associated, that the current that is read by these CTs. Again, these are going to be fast over current, like I explained earlier, because of the different the filtering that we are going to filters that we are going to use in this. So combined with taking the combined assertion from the fault current and from the intensity of light, these relays are going to trip. So just to visualize, sensor can be located as far as about 35 meters from the relay. So this is typically required in any switchboard, because in a switchboard you would have a separate compartment where your control equipments are mounted and a separate compartment where your breaker is mounted. So you can place those up to 35 meters, and if the arc flash hazard were to happen in the bus bar itself, bus bar compartment itself, then you have a larger area to cover. And in order to cover those kind of places, we use a bare fiber sensors, which are basically wrapped around the bus bar of the switchboard, and any arc flash that is going to occur in this bus bar can be detected as a light through this sensor. So some of the ideal location for placing this sensor would be on the in the breaker compartment. You can see on the top side or on the bottom side of the breaker compartment, and then this is the bus bar compartment. So in the bus bar compartment, you can mount them, and even in the outgoing compartments also, we can mount these sensors. So these are some of the pictures from the actual installation of how the point sensors are mounted. So these are some of the best places, the good places, and the suboptimal places to mount this sensor, so that these sensors can detect the light whenever there is a fault that occurs, either during racking or racking out of these breakers. So this is the bare fiber sensor that installation of bare fiber sensors that we can see in the bus bar chamber. So now I'm going to discuss about an actual event, and we are going to see how what we discussed in the earlier slide is going to help us in understanding how the system operates in the actual fault. So uh, this installation, we had installed one such system in a grid tied battery storage plant. So this particular battery storage plant is in Delhi. It is basically in the Tata Power Delhi distribution board. So they have installed this grid-tied battery storage plant. So this is one of the South Asia's largest grid-tied battery storage plant, wherein with a capacity of about 10 megawatt storage, and each nodes having up to 2.5 megawatt of storage capacity. So if you look at this particular substation, so we have the battery storage units, and from the battery storage units, using the inverters, they are connected to the 415 volt switchboard level. So from the 415 volt switchboard level, the voltage is stepped up to 11 kV, and then through 11 kV they are again stepped up to a 33 kV to be connected on the to the grid. So this is also a typical scheme that you may find in any renewable integration. When we look at solar photovoltaic based generation, even you would have a similar kind of approach. You may have batteries in some cases, or in some cases you may have directly the photovoltaic cell being directly connected to the 415 volt switchboard and then pumped up to a level of voltage which is suitable for the substation to be connected. So mostly you would find it either on 11 kV system, 33 kV system, and in some cases wherein the photovoltaic generation is at a large rating, like for example 30 megawatt or 40 megawatt or 50 megawatt, then these kind of grid stations are also connected to the 110 volt systems and 132 kV level system also. So here in any case, you are still going to connect all your photovoltaic cell or your battery storage equipments on the LT system only, and where you can have the hazard of arc flash, where the hazard of arc flash is also pretty evident. So in this particular installation, we had installed two sensors, the point sensors in the breaker chamber, and a bare fiber sensors running through the bus bars of the 415 volt switchboard. 415 volt switchboard. Sorry. So these are some of the installation pictures. You can see the point sensor being mounted in the breaker chamber, and the bare fiber sensor being mounted on the LV bus bar arrangements. So here, just to in addition to explain, there are multiple sets of batteries that are connected onto a common node, and you have 4 such node, and each node the total capacity is about 2.5 megawatt in this particular installation. And then you have the step up transformer, and which is again connected to the 11 kV switchboard. So for this particular installation on 1st of February 2019, we saw an arc flash event occur. And in this particular arc flash event, the actual peak fault current, if you see on the 415 volt side, went up to 39 kiloamperes. And the relay operation time in this case was measured to be about 3.76 millisecond, which basically, due to this fast operating time of the relay, based on the arc flash protection, we were able to mitigate the hazard associated with the arc flash significantly. And when we further investigated what could be the possible cause of an arc flash, so it was due to one of the stray bolt that was left on the outgoing leg of the LT breaker. So let us try to understand where exactly it was. So there was a stray bolt that was left on one of the outgoing leg of the LT breaker. So this is again a 415 volt breaker, and the incoming side is again further connected to the transformer, the 415 bar 11 kV transformer, and the outgoing side is basically connected to the feeders that are, in this case basically these are the battery storage inverters. So because of the fault that occurred on this particular due to this particular bolt, it initially initiated as a face-to-face fault, but gradually the face-to-face fault on the outgoing leg converted into a three-phase fault because the arc further spread to the third conductor as well. So the face-to-face fault got converted into a three-phase fault. And since in a LT switchgear you do not have a compartment between the outgoing leg and the incoming leg, the arc further spread to the incoming side of the LT switchgear, that is the incoming side of the breaker. So now the fault, the face-to-face fault converted into a three-phase fault on the outgoing leg as well as a three-phase fault on the incoming leg. So we can pretty much see that from the event report which was captured from the relay. So here you can see that initially there was a peak in the current seen by the B phase and the A phase alone, and later on gradually within a fraction of a millisecond we can see that even the third phase was also the blue C phase was also involved. So in this particular time, the relay sensed this particular arc flash event, and the relay just operated in just 3.76 millisecond. So due to this particular fast operating time, it significantly reduced the arc flash energy, and by significant reduction of arc flash energy, the hazard to the people who are working close to the switch gear was mitigated or totally eliminated, and the impact that this fault could cause on the primary equipment was also significantly reduced. So as an overall restoration phenomenon, the customer had to just replace some of the copper bars associated with the joints at the incoming level and at the outgoing level. There were no major damage to the primary equipment that was caused in this particular event. And just from the academic point of view, I also worked to identify what could have been the incident energy level if the arc flash protection was not into picture. So if the arc flash protection was not into picture, then basically the relay would operate on a IDMT based time coordinated system. And to do that, we identified the maximum bolted fault current, and you can do that bolted. I have provided the calculation over here. We use the kVA of the transformer and the kVA levels, short circuit kVA levels, and then we found out the percentage impedance, and using that source percentage impedance we found out the maximum bolted fault current. And as per our calculation, we were able to see that the bolted fault current level on the 415 volt switchboard was the maximum fault current could have been up to 47 kiloamperes. And when we use the IEEE 1584 standard to convert that bolted fault current and to understand the associated arc flash current, then that arc flash current was near about 20.02 kiloamps level. And the calculation of this, we took into consideration the maximum bolted fault current and the system voltage, which in this case was the 415 volt system voltage, and the configuration of the bus bar or the configuration of the total cubicle, that is which houses the breaker and the bus bar. So IEEE 1584 provided us the guidelines to calculate this, and then we determined the operating time of the breaker and the operating time of the relay if the arc flash protection was not there. So if the arc flash protection was not there, so the relay would operate on an IDMT based coordinated system. So in the inverse definite time over current, we would find that the overall fault clearing time from the relay would come around 242 millisecond, and if you add another 60 millisecond of the breaker opening time, then it would come around 302 millisecond as overall fault clearing time. And considering this 302 millisecond as overall fault clearing time, we determined the incident energy that would have been the worst case incident energy, that was coming about 17.46 calorie per centimeter square. And using that incident energy, we determined the boundary condition or the boundary of an arc flash here, which was coming to be around 3.76 meters. So since we had applied arc flash protection in this case, so we could reduce that 17.46 calorie per centimeter square kind of incident energy to just 3.7 calorie per centimeter square because of the fast occurring time of the relay. So in our case, the operating time of the relay was just 3.7 millisecond, and if you add a breaker opening time of 60 milliseconds, so the overall fault clearing time was reduced to about 67 millisecond when compared to 300 millisecond of the IDMT based coordinated bed system. So we were able to basically reduce the incident energy by about 79%, and the boundary from 3.76 meter to just 1.31 meters. So there was a 65% reduction in the arc flash boundary. So that also helps not only with just the calculation, even the PPE that would be required for reducing for a person to be for the person to use in this kind of scenario. So if there was no arc flash protection, then the person would require a category 3 personal protective equipment. So since they had applied the arc flash protection, now even the category 1 PPE is sufficient enough to be used for working in this kind of environment. So if you imagine wearing these two equipment, these two PPEs, so this is what a category 3 PPE would look like. So we can understand what kind of suit we may have to wear if we have to work under category 3. But similar on the other hand, since with the arc flash protection we reduced it to category 1, we were able to in fact reduce the category of the PPE, which is much comfortable to wear and to work in those environments. So as a conclusion, so the arc flash hazards are actually in real, let it be on grid tied photovoltaic generation, or it is a power plant, a thermal based power plant, or it may be any industry. So these kind of scenarios are pretty much real, and we need to have awareness about these hazards associated with the arc flash, and the awareness about the ways to mitigate that. And then there are also that some of the schemes like we see where would also require some communication to be established between the relays, and those kind of communication requirements can be eliminated by using the arc flash sensors, the light sensors, and mitigate the arc flash hazard significantly, and any unnecessary intrusions significantly. And then by using the arc flash overcurrent, the fast overcurrent, and the arc flash sensor would also be a much economical option for us or for any industry to approach to provide protection in any switch gears that may be on a 415 volt, 6.6 kV, or a 3.3 kV, or 11 kV, and even up to 33 kV level. And it is important for an operator to be also aware about this kind of protection and the category of PPE that he has to wear whenever he is going to operate in this kind of environment. So with that, I conclude my presentation, and I am open for any questions. If anyone has any question, please feel free to ask.
Any questions from the participant side? Okay, so if they have any questions, we'll just let you know in the mail. We'll consolidate and let you know in the mail so that you can reply back to that.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you
sir.
everyone for attending this session and providing your valuable time.
Sir, one question in chat box, sir, from
Yeah,
Mr. Veerasundaram.
yeah.
How this is related to power system transients?
Okay. Power system transients, you will have basically in this case, like we were seeing, that there are initial peaks in the current that we were able to see. So here during the fault, there could be a transient that is even associated with the DC offsets. So when you see there are large DC offsets that are going to occur, so basically the DC offsets are going to increase the level of the short circuit current. And when you have those kind of high short circuit current, then it becomes the category of the arc flash hazard may turn from category 3, or it may even exceed the category 4 kind of arc flash hazard. So power system transients, if you look from the 415 faults on the switchboard level, it is very much relevant that you take all this into consideration. But if you look from the outside fault, let us assume that there is a fault on the 66 kV line or a 33 kV line, that is not going to impact this, because the fault is going to be on the lines and you have the other set of relays to clear it. And even if there is a arcing that happens during the fault there, then no major hazard associated with human being or any equipment is going to occur. But here we are talking about the hazards that occur on the switch gears or the switchboards, wherein you would find most people working very closely with. So we are talking here about the ways to mitigate these the switchboard related hazards, like it may be a bus bar fault or it may be a fault face-to-face fault in the switchboards. And here we need to take into consideration the maximum voltage fault currents and the DC offsets that may be associated. I hope that answered your query, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. If you have any other queries, sir, please feel free to send me an email. I'll be happy to reply you on those things.
Sir, one more request, sir. Can you just share your PPT so that we can, we had to give to the participants at the end of the sessions. We are giving them. So can
Sure,
you just share your PPT?
sure, ma'am. I'll share it by the end of the day to you.
Okay,
Mail.
okay. Yeah, you can just share it to the same mail ID, sir, where you got the link, or you can also share it to someone else, sir.
Sure, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Gayatri, ma'am?
I think you can.
Yeah. So thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable informations that you have given and your patience in giving the answers for the queries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sripad. It's a wonderful lecture, and I mean, whatever we are relating to the cyber security, the happenings on the switchboard level, which can be mitigated by to prevent the further damages and to protect the lives of the operators and the switchboard people around the control room and all that. I think it is an eye opener for everybody that our flash is catching up with the other types of protection. And what you have said, you have used analog details direct itself and directly reduce the tripping time to almost 3 milliseconds. It's a wonderful thing. And otherwise, the energy dissipated would be much higher and the damage would be much enormous. So thanks for enlightening the attendees and to us. about the various developments taking place in the industry. And I really thank Schweitzer management for deputing you and Mr. Abraham for the lectures. It was really wonderful, and thanks a lot, sir.
Participants are requested to fill the feedback form. The link is there in the chat box and also posted in the WhatsApp group. So we'll break for today's day, and tomorrow we'll have the session at 10 o'clock. So requesting all to join at least 15 minutes earlier the session. So have a good day.
Thanks, Sripad, again. Thank you. Thanks a lot.